Right now, you heard yesterday that the Verroa mite has been detected on 4 properties across the Lockyer Valley. This is a development just in the last few days. They've known it was coming, but this is the first confirmation that the Verroa mite has crossed the border. The first detection of the world's worst bee-killing parasite in the state. A cluster of 4 properties in the Lockyer Valley at the centre of this. But let's have a closer look at what impact this will have on the bee industry directly. And it's not necessarily all bad news. I want to introduce you to Marina Elliott, who has fallen into being a beekeeper quite by accident, but she is absolutely passionate about the work that she does and passionate about the integral role that bees play in the life cycle of the world. Let's tap into a little bit of positivity for a while. She joins me now. Marina Elliott, good morning and welcome. Such a pleasure to have a chat to you.
Well, I mean, great to be here, David.
Marina, firstly, tell me a bit of background on you. How long have you been a beekeeper?
I guess I had my first introduction to bees in Year 7 with Mr. Moore at East State School. He was a beekeeper, so I had a little glimpse. But through my 20s, I was working as a pastry chef. I came back to Toowoomba at the end of 2019 just for a little visit and to do a short-term contract here, and COVID hit. So I was lucky to be in Queensland during those first lockdowns, but obviously not a lot of work in events available. So I turned up for some farm work down at a farm in the Lockyer, painting boxes for a beekeeper, painting beehives. And on the 3rd day, he asked if I was allergic to bees, and I said, I don't know, I've never been stung. He said, let's find out. So took me out to feed some bees at the time because we were still in drought. And so I just sort of kept turning up. There were always odd jobs to do on the farm. And after a while, I thought, you know what, this isn't just fun because it's new. I really love it. It was, an amazing opportunity to be out in nature, and just the amount of information the bees give us as they go out and forage for flowers and make honey was just so fascinating to me. And luckily, I was interested. There kept being work available and got thrown in the deep end and have never left. So it's been 5 years now. We're pretty much right on my anniversary.
How fantastic. So the seed was planted by your East State School primary school teacher, but it was sort of then, I guess, watered and nurtured more recently. That's a great story.
Yeah, and I think I joked at the start that there was a lot of overlap between working as a chef and beekeeping because you use scrapers that are pretty similar to a pastry scraper and lots of overlap in tools. But the longer I've done it, the more I see it really is a very transferable trade because lots of stuff to do with like food safety translates to like disease prevention in hives, and you have to be pretty bloody fit to work in big catering jobs. And so I had my base strength there, but yeah, the bees definitely work us pretty hard.
So I guess tough times at the moment. Varroa mite has recently been discovered in hives on 4 properties down where you are, largely in the Lockyer Valley. Give me some insight into the impact that development has had on you and others in the industry in this part of the world.
Yeah, so I guess it has. A lot of people have been hearing about Verroa mite in the news, and New South Wales have been grappling with it for 2.5 years now. Once it arrived, it triggered off a huge amount of anxiety for beekeepers. So basically the mite is a mite like if we get a tick, people know about how bad one tick on a dog can be for our beloved family pets. So in a beehive, the conditions are such that the mites love to get in there and proliferate. Bees create a really beautiful, warm and cozy environment, lots of food, lots of nourishment. They're an amazing colony creature living, in a big group together. So the reason it's stressful is because the mite can do so much harm to our bees by weakening them.
Right.
So, and because they're so small and multiply quickly, it has huge impact on the well-being of our honeybees. So for nearly 3 years now, we've known that it's here and it may come to Queensland. And so the discovery, while it's really heartbreaking for us as beekeepers in Queensland, in some ways having it detected here locally gives us a sign that, okay, now is the time to move forward and start to monitor and manage the mites once they do arrive in our hives. So although it's really devastating, it sort of removes that unknown cloud of stress and tells us it's time to get into action. We can apply all of the knowledge from other parts of the world because every other country in the world has it. So it's been a hard time because while grieving that we're losing that freedom from the mite, we're also getting to, step forward with this wealth of knowledge from other parts of the world and get on with what we do, which is taking care of our bees.
And acceptance, sort of knowing that now there's something you can actually work on rather than just having this cloud hang over your head, but there's really nothing you can do about something that you know may happen but hasn't happened yet.
Exactly.
And that tends to be worse, I guess. There's nothing you can do.
For beekeepers, the work never stops. Part of the reason beekeeping is so brilliant in Queensland is we have such incredible conditions, but we also don't get that winter dormancy that people in snowy countries get. So we don't get that downtime. Beekeepers deal with floods, bushfires, cyclones, weather events. There's no break in the workflow. We can't control the weather. So I think dealing with that stress and grief while also having to go on with the day-to-day business has just been like a lot to juggle.
So tell me, what are the implications for those beekeepers who are directly affected by Varroa mite? So if you went out this morning and discovered that one of your hives was affected in one area, what would the cost be to you?
So I guess as well, news coverage often only can give a really brief glimpse into the implications, and so there's a lot of general stress in the community. And I think it's important to note there's kind of two beekeeping communities in Queensland. So we're all beekeepers, we're all doing the same stuff, but there's commercial guys and women who run a lot of hives and are doing it for their livelihood, and then there's beekeepers who might have only 1 or 2 or 5 hives on their property that they never move. The steps for all of us is the same initially, and the most important thing for everyone to do, if you've got bees, if you know someone with bees, we need to start monitoring. So you go out and check your hives. That's, I think, the biggest thing for people in southeast Queensland to make sure they are doing, because every month now you should be having a check to see if you've got any mites. Once you do that, if you find mites and they're at a certain level, you just need to start looking at treatment options, and there's lots of really great suppliers and resources available to give you those options. So if you've got 1 or 2 hives in your backyard, it's one extra little chore with your hives. You get to check in, see how they're doing. I love an excuse to open my beehives. I open them pretty regularly down in Lockyer because we have such good conditions as well. So I think a lot of people have been more hands-off with their bees. We just need to be a bit more consistent with getting in and checking them. The cost to commercial guys will obviously be a lot higher because everything you do to one hive, you're going to have to do to all of your hives. So the more hives you got, the bigger the costs are going to be. So it's just that extra cost of treatment and the extra labour required, having to be so much more hands-on.
But it's still something that if you get onto it early, then you can offset some of those costs.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the most reassuring things I heard was from a guy from Canada who works with beekeepers to help manage hive health. And he said, we're not in the business of killing mites, we're in the business of healthy bees. And I think that is such a good way to frame it. Knowledge is power. As long as you know if you've got mites and what level the mites are at, you can nip it in the bud early and make sure you've got happy, healthy bees. And I think as well, so much of the talk of Varroa mite is about the mite itself. We're forgetting, I think, to include in the conversation what a joy beekeeping is and how brilliant and remarkable bees are at taking care of themselves. So as long as you're doing everything in your power as a beekeeper to give them enough space, to limit access for cane toads. Cane toads will climb up on top of each other to get into the entrance of a beehive and eat the bees. So as long as we're doing everything we can, employing everything in our arsenal to make sure the bees are healthy, then as long as you're checking and know if you've got mites, you can help tackle it. But the bees do such a huge majority of the work for making sure they're healthy. This is just, they haven't evolved with the mite, so we need to do a little bit extra to help them along.
Fair enough. Yeah, nice, nicely put, nice explanation. Do you think everyone in the industry is being hyper-vigilant in the way that you describe, or is there still a lot of complacency out there? Because it is relatively new in terms of a discovery of the mites this side of the border, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's only been in the last week that we've become aware that it's definitely in Queensland. And I think, again, with that question of complacency, we need to look at where the beekeepers are coming from. So I think in the industry, complacent is not a word I would ever use. Beekeepers have been so on edge and aware of the imposing threat,
right,
while there not being a lot that we can actually do until it's here and we need to start managing it. So I think the industry is definitely fatigued. So all the professional beekeepers, as I said, even before the mite arrived, it's just constant battle to cope with the weather conditions that we're faced with, to make sure we've got bees that are safe from fire, safe from flood, and you don't always have a lot of notice if there's a weather event coming. So the industry is definitely fatigued. I think there is a bit of complacency. So in Queensland, we've got 10,000 registered beekeepers. Most of those are people with only, one or two, a small number of hives. A lot of people aren't very hands-on, and a lot of people maybe aren't tapped in with the broader beekeeping community. So I think a bit of complacency just around smaller beekeepers who maybe don't know a lot of, or maybe any other beekeepers. So it's a good and timely reminder, I think, that beekeeping is something that people learn across a lifetime. It's a really long-winded way of saying everyone should join a bee club, everyone should get together with other beekeepers they know. If you've been shy about asking that guy down the road who sells honey from his shed if you can chat to him about your bees, pick up the phone, knock on the door, make the effort to connect with other beekeepers in your area, because Varroa mite's completely new for us in this area, and not many other people in the world have conditions like we do. So we're all going to need to pool our knowledge and learn together. So yeah, I think it's stressful, but it's a really timely opportunity for us to all connect together more as an industry and as people who are passionate about bees.
That's great. I'm out of time, but you've given us a fantastic perspective on it, and really lovely to hear such a positive attitude. So, Marina, thank you very much. We will stay in touch. But
thanks so much, David.
Yeah, no, thank you for lending us your perspective this morning. Really appreciate it.
And just one more shout out. People will want to know what they can do to support beekeepers and the industry. Buy 100% Australian honey. Doesn't matter who you buy it from, which shop, which brand. Just check the label, make sure it's 100% Australian honey.
Fair enough. Good advice. So that's something that we can all do, whether we're going to dabble in it as a hobby or whatnot. Definitely, that's something you can do to support the industry.
Yeah.
Good advice, Marina. Lovely to chat. Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thanks so much. Stay dry.